Abu al-Fadl Abbas, one loud salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين. الحمد لله الذي هدانا لهذا وما كنا لنهتدي لولا أن هدانا الله. والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين خاتم النبيين سيدنا الممجد بشير المصدق المصطفى الأمجد محمود الأحمد أبي القاسم محمد صلى على محمد وعلى أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين ولعنة الله على الظالمين من الأولين والآخرين. أما بعد، قال أمير المؤمنين علي بن أبي طالب صلوات الله وسلامه عليه: إن ولدي عباس زق العلم زقا. آمنا بالله صدق الله العلي العظيم وصدق رسول الكريم والحمد لله رب العالمين. صلوات على محمد وآل محمد. Awaited Savior of humanity, Imam al-Mahdi alayhi salam, my respected elders, brothers and sisters, Assalamu alaikum jami'an wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. On this most auspicious occasion in which we have gathered to celebrate the birth anniversary of His Eminence Abu al-Fadl Abbas alayhi salam, our congratulations goes out to the master of our age, Imam al-Mahdi ajjalallahu ta'ala faraj al-sharif. We express our congratulations to all of our maraji', to all of the mu'mineen and mu'minat around the world, and to all of humanity, for indeed the birth of Abu al-Fadl Abbas alayhi salam is a birth that all of us can participate and enjoy in, insha'Allah. The hadith that we have quoted comes to us from Amir al-Mu'mineen Ali ibn Abi Talib salawatullah wa salamuhu alayhi. The hadith refers to his son Al-Abbas alayhi salam in the most beautiful of ways. He says, Inna waladi Abbas zaqqul ilma zaqqa. Surely my son Abbas is fed knowledge. My son Abbas is fed knowledge. This hadith is very interesting because if we compare it, for example, to the hadith regarding Her Eminence Sayyidah Zainab salawatullah wa salamuhu alayha, Imam alayhi salam says about her, she is alima ghayra muallima. She is an alim without having been taught by an external source. Here, Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salam places another grand title upon those who are our masters. To Sayyidah Zainab alayhi salam, she is the alima without having been taught. Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salam says about Abu Fadl that he is someone who is fed knowledge. Now, this evening, insha'Allah, I want to refer to one of the most famous aspects of the life of Hazrat Abbas alayhi salam, but to explore it in a possibly unique way and to discuss it in a way that might be very pertinent for us today, in order to understand the world around us and the extent of the conditioning that takes place upon you and I as individuals. The story of Abu al-Fadl alayhi salam is very famous. After the martyrdom of Her Eminence Lady Fatima az-Zahra salawatullah wa salamuhu alayha, Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salam desired to be married again. In fact, the mother of Al-Abbas alayhi salam, Her Eminence Fatima al-Kilabiyya, known as al-Baneen salamullahi alayha, was the third wife of Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salam. We know he goes to Aqil alayhi salam and says to him, "O Aqil, you are very knowledgeable when it comes to the genealogies of Arabia. I wish to have a wife in order to produce a son who will be of assistance to Hussein ibn Ali on the 10th of Muharram." This was his purpose. And by God, the way in which he fulfilled his purpose. I wish to have a son who will be there as a protector, as an aid to my son Hussein on the 10th of Muharram. I wish you to find me a wife who comes from a tribe of great valor, of great courage. And so, of all the tribes in Arabia, and of all the women in Arabia, Fatima al-Kilabiyya al-Baneen salamullahi alayha was picked to be this personality. The history of this tribe is very famous within the books of Arabian history. Many of the tribes are known in certain ways of being very dynastic. There were dynasties that were known for certain issues or for certain things within the Arabian community. The tribe of Fatima al-Kilabiyya was known as being a tribe to produce warriors. Not just the tribe, the specific family and lineage of Fatima al-Kilabiyya alayhi salam was known as being producers of great warriors and people of great courage on the battlefield. Her great-grandfather was by the name of Amir. He was known in history as being a warrior on the battlefield. Her grandfather, also by the name of Amir, was given a specific title within history. He was someone who was known as the fighter of lions. Why? He would fight and kill lions. He would fight and kill beasts. It is not a surprise that when you produce from the lineage of Amir, who is the fighter of the lions, and Asadullah, who is the lion of Allah, it is no surprise that you produce Abu Fadl Abbas salawatullah wa salamuhu alayhi. The uncle of Fatima al-Kilabiyya was also known as someone very ferocious on the battlefield, to the extent that, again, the books of history tell us that one of the Roman kings by the name of Qaisar, when he traveled to Arabia, he would invite the uncle of Fatima al-Kilabiyya to his house or where he was staying in order to honor him because of how famous a warrior he was. This is the lineage of Abu Fadl alayhi salam from his mother's side. Now this shows us something very particular, something that we know very well from this story. It shows us that the family lineage, the way in which a community, a family practice, this will be imbibed into the generations to come. Amir, the great-grandfather, the one who would fight lions of Abu Fadl alayhi salam, that characteristic ends up becoming part and parcel of us and eventually becomes passed down to the next generation. You and I today know this. For example, we say it's in his DNA. It's in his DNA. He was born this way. This shows us that something from several generations back can be passed down. Stage one. What happens in the lineage of someone can be passed down into a child. Another way, something that can be passed down through the child is the period in the womb, particularly. And so the time spent, 9 months or whenever in the womb, is particular again to the development of the child, the characteristics that will come to the child. By now, many of us know this, and you will see that when a person is pregnant, they will go through extra effort in order to make the environment of the child in the womb a very wholesome one, something very spiritual. They will try to remain in the state of wudu. They will increase their ibadat. They will increase their recitation of Quran. When they're in the kitchen and they are cooking, they will be listening to Quran, listening to Hadith al-Kisa. Why? For the purpose of increasing the nurturing positively upon the child. Here is a side point. This is a great amal, a very good thing to do. However, many of us practice such an amal only once the child is conceived. If this is something that is positive for the child, it is positive for the child indefinitely. Why not practice this for yourself and before the child is conceived? For 9 months, we begin to stay in wudu. For 9 months, we begin to listen to Quran. Child is born, we go back to the old habits. Hollywood goes on, Bollywood goes on, nothing changes in the long-term sense. Stage 2 of a child's development. The third stage of the child's development, and the one that we wish to focus on this evening inshallah, is after birth. And the environment, and particularly the conditioning that comes to a child by virtue of that which he or she is exposed to. The hadith that we cited from Amir al-Mu'mineen Ali ibn Abi Talib salawatullah wa salamu alayhi, Inna waladiya Abbas, surely my son Abbas, zaqqul ilma zaqqa, he was fed knowledge piece by piece. He was fed one after another, knowledge after knowledge. And that is why Al-Abbas alayhi salam became what he was ultimately going to be. The conditioning that a child is exposed to, or any of us are exposed to, has huge impacts upon us. Sometimes we realize it, and sometimes we don't. There's a great deal of subtlety that comes upon us through the conditioning that we are exposed to. Imagine for a moment, Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salam wanted to produce a son like Al-Abbas alayhi salam. And he chose a lineage that started several generations back. The great-grandfather of Al-Abbas alayhi salam was such a warrior that would become infused into the conditioning of Al-Abbas alayhi salam. I ask a very simple question. If a grandfather from several generations back can impact positively on Al-Abbas alayhi salam, or on a child from the lineage of you and I, to what extent does the direct environment of a child at home impact the conditioning of a child? Surely it is multiplied in great lengths. Surely the extent is greater than the impact from my great-great-grandfather by virtue of the immediate exposition that I am being placed into. I want you to imagine this as an example, as a similitude, for you to appreciate how exposing our children and ourselves to one thing, positive or negative, can have a huge impact upon our children. Imagine now, you take off on a plane. You take off from Heathrow and you want to go to New York, the United States of America. Or, for example, you're on a ship leaving from the coast of Ireland and you're going to New York. So you're going across the Atlantic Ocean. You're going straight from point A to point B. Now imagine if you're the captain of the ship and you decide, I can go straight, or I'll just turn the plane, or I'll just turn the rudder by 1 degree or 5 degrees, left or right, port or starboard. What is the outcome of that? The outcome of you even changing the ship's course by 1 degree would mean that over a period of the number of days that you are on that ship, or the number of hours you are on that plane, you are continuously going off course. You're going to change your destination by many, many, many miles. Over the period of a number of hours, you may end up north in Canada, or if you go this way, you'll end up south in Mexico. True or not? In the same way, we don't realize that one small thing that we expose ourselves to, positively or negatively, over a number of years can change the course of our personality, the course of our character, and ultimately the destination of you and I. It's very simple. There's no difference. And we have to realize what we're exposing ourselves to and the outcome that that ultimately gives to you and I. We are exposed to so much that we don't even realize, that we have become so accustomed to. It is second nature for us to see and to partake in these things and not even realize what we're seeing and what we're imbibing into ourselves. Just think for a moment about your day. Just reflect for a moment on your day, from the time in which you woke up to when you came here. The various external influences that were upon you and I. For example, none of them I'm going to say are good or bad. I want to give you an example and just you run through them in your own day. You have the influence of your family, which can be positive or negative. You will have the influence of the TV and the particular shows or news or films that you watched. You will have exposure to the adverts that you watch. They are advertising to you because they know you are susceptible to something. Otherwise, they wouldn't be trying to advertise to you. Then, when you go to your friends, when you go to work, when you go to school, when you open the newspaper, when you open the magazines, when you come to the pulpit, when you come to the madrasa, everything is trying to exert influence upon you and I. Is trying to make you think the way they want you to think. Even now, I am trying to make you think the way I want you to think. I want to expose you to a topic, and I want you to agree with me by the end of my 40 minutes. Even I am trying to condition you to think the way I want you to think. True or not? Everyone, everything you are coming in contact with seeks to condition your thought process. The question is it healthy for me? Is it healthy for my child to be exposed to these particular things? In the Holy Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, we are made مُخَلَّقَةٌ وَغَيْرَ مُخَلَّقَةٌ لِنُبَيِّنَ لَكُمْ. You are made created and also uncreated. There's part of you He fashioned, but there's part of us that we end up fashioning ourselves. Everything wants to condition and fashion you the way they want you to fashion you. The advertisers, the government, your friends, your family. And it is imperative that you and I understand the effects of those conditioning that we are exposed to and the way in which they impact our thought process. In order to condition, and in order to positively or negatively condition, Muslims, and in particular those people who have sought to become enemies to the school of Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam, have always sought to be able to condition. And in particular they have done this during the period of youth. You will remember that very famous hadith from Amir al-Mu'mineen Ali ibn Abi Talib salawatullah wa salamuhu alayhi, where he says, the heart of a youth is like an uncultivated piece of land. Whatever you throw upon it, that is what it will sow the seeds of. At the time of our 10th Imam, Imam Ali al-Hadi, salawatullah wa salamuhu alayhi, Abbas. When he became the Imam at 7 years old. The Caliph was Al-Mu'tasim. Al-Mu'tasim thought differently to his forefathers, who were also abusers of Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam and enemies to Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam. Al-Mu'tasim, you know what he said? He said, let me get in early to these children, to this Imam. And if I can influence him, then maybe I can change him from his age of youth and shift his course so that he does not grow up to be an Imam of Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam. To whom? Imam al-Hadi alayhi salam. He called one of his ministers. This minister was the person that whenever Al-Mu'tasim wanted some tyranny done, something evil, he went to this particular minister by the name of Umar ibn al-Faraj. He came to Umar and said to him, I want you to take this youth Al-Hadi and I want you to find the best of teachers who is an enemy of Ali ibn Abi Talib, and I want you to have Al-Hadi converted to being an enemy of Ali ibn Abi Talib. Na'udhu billah. 7 years old. Look how tyrannical leadership knows how to target youth. Imperative that you and I understand this. What did he do? Umar went into Medina and found one of the leading teachers by the name of Al-Junaidi. He comes to Al-Junaidi and says, I want you to teach this child Al-Hadi, and whatever you teach him, I want you to tinge, color with the hatred of Ali ibn Abi Talib. Al-Junaidi takes him as a student. He takes him, and after a long time, one of the companions of Imam al-Hadi alayhi salam meets with Al-Junaidi and wishes to inquire, what's happening to my Imam at the moment? Do you know what he did? Al-Junaidi took him outside of the city of Medina, outside, to an abandoned house and kept him there for weeks and weeks, if not months and months, in order to make sure he was not, Imam al-Hadi alayhi salam was not in conversation with other people. That he, Al-Junaidi, could have time to focus on the mind of Imam al-Hadi alayhi salam. One of the companions meets him and says to Al-Junaidi, tell me, what have you been teaching Imam al-Hadi? He wanted to go back to the Shia and tell them the update of what was happening to their Imam. He comes to Al-Junaidi and says, what's happening to this, tell me, what's happening to this young boy that you are teaching? Al-Junaidi gets angry. He says, don't call him a boy. Call him my Sheikh, because he's been teaching me more than I teach him. He says, what do you mean? He says, I have a rule in the house. Before you enter into the room that we are going to be learning dars, you have to recite from the Quran. And I tell him to start from a particular verse in a particular chapter. He recites the entire chapter. I don't know where he's learned this Quran from. Weeks pass, and again this companion meets with Al-Junaidi. The hadith says again, he inquires, tell me about this young boy, Imam al-Hadi, that you have been teaching. Again Al-Junaidi responds by saying, didn't I tell you last time not to call him a young boy? This time I tell you to call him my master. Not my Sheikh, my master. The companion asks Al-Junaidi, what do you mean call him master? Why? He says, I begin to teach him balagha. Balagha. Who gave us Nahj al-Balagha? I come to teach Imam al-Hadi balagha, and he teaches me things that I had never even comprehended before. Now look at this. The Caliph knew, to destroy a child, I get in there early. I need to shift the thinking, grow up thinking the way I want him to think about. Now think about this very closely. Think about the things that you and I expose our children to. There are many Shia parents. Child comes home, immediately switches on the Disney Channel. For the next hour, 2 hours, 3 hours, he's staring at young men and young women who have been hand-picked by Disney for a purpose of entertainment and lust and desire. True or not? Am I saying something that's not true? Am I saying something that's surprising to you? We take them to watch the films, and there's these young boys and young girls, singers, and they're dressed this way and they're dressed that way, and for hours after hours they're staring at this screen, imbibing all of this in day after day, week after week, year after year. They come home, on the TV, X Factor, on the TV this film, on the TV that Bollywood song, on the TV there is this, the magazines are this, on the internet is this. And for year after year after year they're being exposed to the very same things the rest of the world is being exposed to. Look at the problem, the dynamic. We bring them on a Thursday night, and they recite Dua Kumail, or they listen to the majlis, and they listen to the stories of Abu Fadl alayhi salam. But then they go home and they're exposed to the same thing the Western world is exposing them to. The contradiction is created here in the mind of the child. That within the four walls of Bustan-e-Zahra, I have to be religious. But when I go home or I'm outside, it doesn't really matter. I'm exposed to something completely different. I tell you, brothers and sisters, this contradiction weighs heavily on the child of the mind of a child. I wish to tell you a story. And I can swear by God that these two stories that I'm about to tell you are true. And I tell you that I am a madrasa teacher, and that these are first-hand stories of our Shia youth within our own community here in London. So it's not something I'm speaking to you of the States, not something I'm telling you about Karachi or Dar es Salaam, it's here in London. Recently, 2 months ago, in a madrasa class, we had the question, what do you want to be when you grow up? Actually, this is the wrong way to word the question. Never ask a child, what do you want to be when you grow up? Ask them, what change do you want to see in the world? And when they highlight, I wish there was no hunger, no poverty, then you ask, in which way are you going to make that change? But anyway, the question was, what do you want to be when you grow up? And every one of the class responded. And the class is 14 years old. So you know the age. Every child got to answer. Some children, brothers and sisters, said, I want to do this, I want to do that, I want to do this, I want to do that. Alhamdulillah, good, wholesome things. But I wish to tell you two of the answers that came our way. And I want you to think about what's being exposed to our children and the influences that you and I have upon our children. We asked one of the young brothers, 14 years old, what do you want to be when you grow up? He responded and said, I want to be a famous YouTube star. I want to have my own YouTube channel. I want several million viewers, and I want to make jokes all day, and I want to get paid for it. He said, and I quote, these YouTube channels, they're sponsored. I can get advertising and the adverts will pay me. What do you want to do on this YouTube channel? He said, I just want to make jokes. I want to make pranks all day. Why? He said, then I can make as much money as I want. I can wake up when I want. I can go to sleep when I want. Now forget whether you agree or you disagree or you think it's a good answer or a bad answer. The question I ask, what has that child been exposed to in order for him to think along those lines? anyone who knows social media very well, you will know that there are constant channels that have various different pranks, stupid pranks, silly things. And for hours and hours we can watch prank after prank, and the child will imbibe this and think that this is something positive to him. Now I tell you what one of our sisters said, a Shia of our community. Sister, what do you want to be when you grow up? You know what she responded? I want to be a wag. Now someone here may not know what a wag is, and I wish to explain it in order to tell you what's happening in the real world by virtue of what we expose to our children. A wag, W-A-G, wag. It stands for wife and girlfriend of a famous footballer or movie star or someone of that nature. Wag, wife and girlfriend. So he said, why do you want to be a wag? And she responds by saying, then I will have the most beautiful of dresses. I will have paparazzi taking my photos. I will be able to go to all the famous restaurants and go to all the very famous movie premieres. This isn't my words. I'm telling you what's coming from the youth of our own communities. Now again, I ask you a simple question. How did a sister of our community who goes to madrasa every week, comes from Muharram, Safar, Shahr Ramadan, partakes in Ma'tam, cries over Fatima al-Zahra, knows the stories of Sayyidah Zainab, salamullahi alayhi majmeen, everything, yet come out with an answer that says, I want to be a wife or a girlfriend of a famous footballer? It can only be based upon what she is being exposed to. And immediately you and I, as parents, grandparents, uncles and aunties, elder siblings, should question what is in our house and what we're exposing our youth to that is making them think this particular way. Ask yourself, what were the last 10 TV programs on your TV? Ask yourself, what magazines are in your house? Ask yourselves, what are the last 5 movies that your children went to watch or you went to watch? Ask yourself, what computer games your sons have in the house? Ask yourself, what do they watch on YouTube? Now, if you don't know the answer to these questions, then there is a significant problem in the relationship between parent and child. But if we know the answer and you can say that there are negative things, it is not a surprise when our children grow up saying, I wish to be a wife or a girlfriend of a very famous footballer so I can attend as many parties as I can possibly attend. This is real. This is really happening. And sometimes we think that we have to expose our youth to whatever else is happening in the Western world. Western world drinks Coca-Cola, let them drink Coca-Cola. Western world eats out twice a week from Chicken Cottage, I'll make sure I also eat out twice a week from Chicken Cottage. The contradiction is, we say that we live one way within these 4 walls, but then we go out and we live like the rest of the world. It is no surprise when the youth do not come to the program. It is no surprise when less and less people come on a Thursday night. It is no surprise when we become Muharram Muslims or Shahr Ramadan Muslims. When the contradiction is that we expose ourselves to whatever else is being exposed to in the rest of the world. My clothes says Muslim. My ma'tam says I cry for Abu Fadl. but my internal watches X Factor and watches Disney and drinks Coca-Cola and eats from Chicken Cottage twice a week, how can I be any different to the other person walking down the street? It's a simple question. The external says, I'm Shia, but the internal is imbibing the very same world that is experienced in the rest of the world. The media, the government, the secularization, everything is attacking. Everything is attacking. It is surprising that we expose and give our children to those very same people. This is what's happening. Now, I wish to give you another story, and I invite you this evening, when you have time, go home and watch this clip on YouTube. Write this down, or make a note in your phones now, or write it down, or make a mental note. There is something called a class divided. A class divided. It is one of the most famous sociological tests that have ever been done. It occurred to a group of third graders, year 3 students, immediately after the killing of Martin Luther King Jr. A teacher gathered her class, third graders. Now, as you know, after Martin Luther King Jr. in the United States in the 60s, it was very much about racism, color, black versus white. The teacher wished to demonstrate how easily a child can be manipulated and how easily they can be changed to think and believe something and then brought back to believe something different. So what they did was they put in secret cameras into the classroom, and the teacher began to do something very interesting, and you'll see it on A Class Divided, and I only have a few minutes to explain it to you briefly. She decided to divide the class into 2. Not black and white. She wanted to teach how stupid racism was and how easily they can be manipulated into thinking black and white is good or bad. What did she do? She decided to say that every child in this class with blue eyes is better than a child in this class with brown eyes. Simple. Blue eyes are better than brown eyes. And in order to reinforce this notion upon the children, she would say things like, anyone who is blue-eyed gets to go 2 minutes early to recess, whereas the brown-eyed people have to go 2 minutes later to recess. Then she would say to the blue-eyed people, do you know the fathers of the brown-eyed kids beat them because they are worse people? What happened? The blue-eyed kids started to think that they were better than the brown-eyed kids, and the brown-eyed kids started to think they were inferior to the blue-eyed kids. Then the afternoon came, and she switched it, and she decided to tell all the kids the brown-eyed kids are better than the blue, and the blue are worse than the brown. And again, she began to reinforce this, and you will see on the video how in the morning all the children begin to believe and say things themselves that blue-eyed children are better than brown, and in the afternoon when she switched it, they began to describe and say things to suggest brown-eyed children were better than blue-eyed children. This is how easily children can be manipulated into thinking, believing, acting, and following in certain ways. And we need to understand this, that our youths are sponges. They can only put out what we put into them. And if I expose them to the rest of the things the world is exposing them to, it is very difficult to make them into the leaders of the ummah that we wish to make on behalf of Hazrat Abbas salawatullah wa salamuhu alayhi. We started this evening with the hadith of Amir al-Mu'mineen where he says, Inna waladiya Abbas zaqqun al-ilma zaqqa. My son Abbas was fed knowledge after knowledge. We want to expose our children to beautiful things, not things of ugly nature or the things that are going to negatively impact them. Inshallah, we can take this discussion as a point of reflection, and when we go home this evening, we can review the things that we are exposing our children to, what is in the house, what is in their room, what we say around them, and where we take them to. And inshallah, we can make our children to become servants like Hussein ibn Ali, like His Eminence Abu Fadl Abbas salawatullah wa salamuhu alayhi was. Please raise your hands, join me in dua, inshallah. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to hasten the appearance of the awaited Savior, to allow us to be alongside Him at all times in our life and in our death. If we were to pass away from this world before His coming, to raise us from our graves so that we may partake in the victory of Muhammad and Ali Muhammad. Ya Allah, there are many people around the world going through such desperate times. We ask them, bihaqqi Abu Fadl, to give them all shafa'a, inshallah, and to accept all of our dua, inshallah. Wassalamu alaikum jami'an wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Can I ask you to conclude with 3 loud salawats in honor of His Eminence Abu Fadl Abbas salawatullah wa salamuhu alayhi.